Good day and welcome back. I know these weeks of preparation can feel like a long corridor with no visible end. Exciting on the days your answers click into place, and quietly heavy on the days they do not. Both feelings are part of the same process, so do not read too much into either one. This is the Sociology Desk, issue 092, and today we are working with two live rulings, one on reservation and merit from the Supreme Court and one on personal law reform from the Kerala High Court. Both are gifts for your answer sheet if you know exactly which thinker to reach for. Let us get into it. Our first story comes from the Supreme Court in a case called Chandan versus State of Jharkhand. Some candidates from reserved categories cleared their civil services examination on open merit, meaning their marks were high enough to compete with the general category. But when postings were allocated, they were given lower services, while reserved candidates with fewer marks got the top posting, the Jharkhand Administrative Service. The court said this was correct, and that a reserved candidate placed in the open list on merit still keeps the right to a better reserved post than someone in that same category with lower marks. Now, why should you care about this as a sociology student? Because this single order is a textbook illustration of a concept that appears almost every year in Paper 1 under Stratification and Mobility. Max Weber, the German sociologist, argued that in any stratified society, there are three separate ladders a person can climb, and they do not always move together. The first is class, your position based on economic or market capacity, which in this case simply means your examination marks. The second is status, the social honor or standing attached to your group membership, which here means your reserved category. The third is party, organized access to power. Weber's whole point was that these three do not automatically align. You can be high on one ladder and still occupy a different position on another. In the Chandan case, a candidate climbed the class ladder very high enough to be counted as open category on marks alone. But the court said that does not erase his position on the status ladder, his reserved category identity. That status claim survives even after the class achievement. This is Weber's separation of class and status, alive in a government order. If you remember one sentence from this segment, remember this. As Weber argued in Economy and Society, class, status, and party are three distinct orders of power in society, and they need not move together. Write that formulation into your answer, word for word if you like, and then attribute it correctly to Weber. Naming the work matters. A student who simply writes that Weber talked about class and status loses marks compared to a student who writes that Weber, in Economy and Society, treated class, status, and party as three independent orders. That precision of attribution is exactly what a paper setter is trained to notice. Now let me put on my examiner's hat for a moment, because this is where most students lose marks without realizing it. An average answer, worth around 14 out of 20, will explain Weber's class, status, and party correctly, mention reservation in India, and stop there. It treats the current event as the whole answer. A top answer, worth 18 or 19 out of 20, does something different. It opens with a structural claim, not a definition. Something like, modern stratification theory debates whether status can survive an achievement in class. Then it names Weber's concept exactly, with the work cited. Then it uses the Chandan ruling in exactly one or two sentences as evidence, not as the story. Then it adds a counter thinker. Here, you could bring in Ambedkar's reading of Article 16.4 as compensatory justice, or Parsons's universalism critique, to show you can hold two theoretical positions in tension. And it closes by looking forward, not just summarizing. Say this to yourself as a rule for every current affairs question you attempt this year. The event is your evidence. The theory is your destination. Students who can perform that sync between a news item and the correct sociologist are the ones who separate themselves from the pack in the evaluator's eyes. Here is a probable question built on exactly this news. In light of the Supreme Court's reaffirmation of reserved category entitlement in the Chandan ruling, critically examine the relevance of Weber's theory of class, status, and party for understanding stratification in Indian public employment. If that question appears in 2026, you now know exactly how to open, which thinker to lead with, and which event to use as your one line of evidence. Our second story moves us into paper 2, into kinship and family law. The Kerala High Court was hearing the case of a Christian woman who had suffered domestic violence, was thrown out of her matrimonial home, and returned to her parents. Under the old reading of the Indian Divorce Act of 1869, she could only file for divorce in the court where her husband lived, or where the marriage happened, not where she herself now lived. The High Court changed that. It ruled that a Christian wife can now file for divorce from her own place of residence, bringing her in line with what Hindu women already have under the Hindu Marriage Act. This is a quiet but significant judgment for anyone studying family, marriage, and kinship in India. Anthony Giddens, the British sociologist, wrote about what he called the transformation of intimacy. His argument was that in late modern societies, personal relationships stop being fixed arrangements handed down by tradition or by an external authority, and become something continuously negotiated by the individuals inside them. Now watch how neatly this maps onto the Kerala ruling. Earlier, the law treated a marriage as tied to a fixed geography, the husband's home, the place the marriage happened. The new ruling allows the wife to carry her legal standing with her, to the place where she herself now lives. The law has stopped anchoring itself to the household and started anchoring itself to the autonomous individual. That is Giddens's transformation of intimacy, expressed not in a sociology textbook, but in a court order. For your answer sheet, here is the formulation to use. As Giddens argued in The Transformation of Intimacy, personal relationships in late modernity are increasingly organized around continually renegotiated commitments, rather than commitments that are externally fixed. Notice again that naming the book matters, and naming the mechanism, renegotiated versus fixed, matters even more than naming the thinker alone. Never let a thinker's name stand alone in your answer without the concept attached to it. An examiner reading 50 scripts a day rewards precision, not name dropping. Let me again contrast two answer scripts on this question. An average script, sitting around 14 out of 20, will describe the judgment accurately. Explain that Christian women can now sue for divorce closer to home, and perhaps mention gender justice in one line at the end. A script scoring 18 or 19 does three additional things. First, it opens with the structural idea that kinship systems are continuously renegotiated at the interface of custom, statute, and adjudication, not with a dictionary definition of marriage. Second, it names Giddens's transformation of intimacy as the anchor concept. And then, to show range, brings in a second lens, Weber's distinction between formal and substantive legal rationality, to explain the court's method of interpretation. Third, it closes by placing this within the larger unresolved debate about personal law pluralism versus a uniform civil code. Once again, the ruling is used in one or two lines as evidence, never as the entire narrative. That is the exact discipline that lifts a script from good to outstanding. And it is entirely learnable. It is not talent, it is method. Here is your probable question for this story. In light of the Kerala High Court's extension of residence based jurisdiction to Christian women, critically examine the relevance of Giddens's concept of the transformation of intimacy for understanding reform within India's personal law systems. Practice writing this answer in exactly the sequence we just discussed. Structural opening, named concept, one line of evidence, counter perspective, forward looking close. Before we close, let us revise in 5 points. 1. Weber said class, status, and party are three separate orders of power that do not automatically move together. 2. The Chandan ruling shows status based reservation surviving even after a candidate proves superior class position through marks. 3. Giddens argued that intimate relationships in late modernity are continually renegotiated rather than externally fixed, and the Kerala ruling embodies exactly that shift. 4. In every single answer, never let a thinker's name stand alone. Always attach the precise concept and, where possible, the work. 5. And this is the rule to tattoo onto your revision notes. The current event is always your evidence, never your topic. The theory is always where the answer is going. That is today's brief. Preparation for this examination is long, and some days it drains you more than it fills you. But the students who keep showing up day after day on the ordinary days and not just the exciting ones are the ones who are still standing strong on results day. If you want the complete answer blocks, the model answers, and the examiner notes behind everything we discussed today, drop your email in the comments or write to us directly at team@upscdesk.com, and our team will share the details with you. Until tomorrow, keep writing, keep syncing your current affairs to your theory, and take care of yourself.